recording. So just FYI, don't touch, and it will pick you up surprisingly. Fun times. Fun times.
What happens to the recordings?
They're kept, and you can go online and click on them and watch them at your leisure.
They're kept forever.
Yes, they are.
Forever.
In the cloud. Yeah.
Forever. Wherever that is.
All
All right.
Do we
Bill, are we
really
ready to call the meeting to order?
We are ready to call the meeting.
All right, let's call the budget meeting of May 12th, 2025 to order. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. And let's see, we're gonna go down the list. We called to order, welcome, introductions. So Brett Stigl, I'm on the board.
Ruth Stevens.
John Ramey.
Spencer Rockwell.
Don Taylor.
Wendy Coates. Stephanie Mall. Don Marquez. Patty Taylor.
Scott Miller, Director of Finance.
Darren Drill, Superintendent.
And welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. Okay, number 3 is elect a chairperson for the budget committee.
Oh, before we do that, Mr. Chair, you can be able to work on the vacancy appointments.
You want to do that first? All right.
Yeah, before the chair.
Okay. So. Ruth, that one.
I move to appoint Patty Taylor to the vacant budget committee position that was previously held by Eric Hunt.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to nominate Patty Taylor to the board. Any discussion on that from either side of the table or just our side?
Just your side.
Just our side. Any discussion on that issue? Any concerns? Nope. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thanks.
Welcome aboard, Patty Taylor.
Yay.
All right, Mr. Pillar, do we need to do the next?
Yeah, why don't we do that one
appointment
while we're all in session for that? Let's just do it.
Mine's on.
Okay, I move to reappoint Wendy Coates and Stephanie Mall to a new 3-year term, which will expire on June 30th, 2028.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to appoint Wendy Coates and Stephanie Mall to a 3-year term. Any discussion on that matter?
Question.
It looks like there's 3 people, Wendy, Dawn, and Stephanie on that.
The third person has elected to not
Thank you.
renew that term.
Thank
Good question.
Okay.
just assumed.
All right, any other questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
For that last position, Mr. Rockwell, we will appoint that for next year.
Great. Thank you.
And we
Okay.
thank Ms. Marquez for all the years she's done it. She's done it for a long time.
I didn't realize it, so I was reading over that. I'm like, it didn't seem like that.
Time flies.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, now we will move on to number 3, to elect a chairperson for the budget committee. Any nominations for chairperson?
I nominate Brett Stigl.
Second. Any discussion? All right, it's been nominated and seconded to nominate me as the chair. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is that even a motion? I don't know if you-
Yeah, it is.
All right, we're good. All right.
Did that correctly.
On to number 5, presentation of the budget message. Mr. Drill.
No, actually, the proposed budget overview, item 4.
What am I getting ahead of myself?
You
Yes,
just
I
got- you
am.
just
Proposed budget overview. Oh, sorry, Mr. Pillar.
Yes. All right, thank you. So in front of you, you have the proposed budget for next year. The process in the state of Oregon for budget approval demands us to have a budget committee every year, and it demands of staff and administration to put together a balanced proposed budget for the future year. Now, the budget committee's job is to evaluate this proposed budget, assess whether it meets the needs of the district, and approve it or suggest changes to it. So you have the ability to suggest changes to the budget. And if we did do that, the group together would have to come together and communicate what those changes are, and they'd have to vote on those changes and then direct staff to do that work. What we have done is put together a shortened version, a little bit trimmer version than we've seen in the past. And so I'd like to just go over this different sections and the different tabs of the budget to let you guys know what you're looking at. So like last year, we have 6 tabs for the budget, and it's usually best to just lay it out this way because it's in landscape format. So behind section 1, we have the budget message that Mr. Bill's going to present, the board and budget committee, calendar for the next year's budget process, the budget review process in accordance with Oregon local budget law, the roles and responsibilities of the budget committee, and a summary of our assumptions, as well as the state school fund estimates for next year. The state school fund is our largest funding source, and so we tend to spend a lot of time analyzing that and planning for those types of things. The particular state school fund grant itemized sheet that comes to us every quarter. And then, of course, enrollment, which is a big part of how much money we get in our state school funds. So that's all in tab 1. Tab 2 is focused on the general fund. Now, remember, the general fund is Fund 100. We refer to it as 100 fund or the general fund, kind of interchangeably. It is by far our largest fund. Most of what we do in educating kids happens out of the general fund. Okay, so that's why it's a little bit more detailed than the other funds that we will see. We have 32 other funds that we work with, but the general fund being the largest by far. So behind tab 2, the first thing that we have is the resources report, which is the proposed revenue. This is what we think we're going to have coming in next year. It's not perfect, but we think this is close to how much money we're going to receive next year. Some lovely graphs that my assistant Katie has worked on. And then further on, it breaks out the proposed spending of that general fund by center. And center in our parlance is by building. So we have the center for the junior high, we have the center for the high school, all the elementary schools, and all of those are in different pages. If you need, there is an index at the very front part, just behind election type sheet is before that one. But anyway, so it breaks down by each of those schools. Behind tab 3 are our special revenue funds. And special revenue funds are a special type of fund that is defined by revenue sources that we're going to receive that may vary. We will receive them for at least 3 years, which make them semi-permanent, but they kind of come and go periodically. And so our special revenue funds are the 200 funds, and they are split out in 2 different ways, or in 2 areas. If you just lift one up, the resources, which is the revenue, is the top, and the same fund number, the requirements or the expenditures are down below. Like the general fund, the revenues have to equal the expenditures. We have to do that. That's what we call a balanced budget. Behind tab 4 are the debt service funds, resources, and revenues, put out the same way as the 200 funds. And we have essentially 3 debt sources currently, areas that we do debt. We'll talk a little bit more about the first one as we go through the budget presentation. That's the PERS debt service. So we have it currently, and we have a side account in the PERS debt service fund 302, and I'm on page 78. That is a big debt service. We end up paying about $2 million a year for that debt service. The next debt service that we have is our bond debt service, and that is the debt service on our general obligation bond. Our general obligation bond is the bond that when you hear about going out for a new school bond for construction and that kind of stuff, a capital bond, this is what that bond is for. We passed, this particular bond was a refinance that was passed in 2013. And this bond is the bond that is coming off the books at the end of next year. That's on page 79. And then finally, we have also a QZAB debt service. And this is the last year that we will have the QZAB debt service. If you look at the proposed budget column, you will see we don't have any revenue or expenditures budgeted for QZAB debt service, because on June 5th or June 15th of this year, we are going to pay this debt off. Okay, and that was a $2 million special bonded debt that we took on before I got here 15, 16 years ago. And I believe it
2009,
was-
2010.
Yeah, do you remember what it was for?
Yeah, so for general upkeep and maintenance, they got $2 million at like 1 or 1.5%.
Yeah,
It was a really, the state offered that, and Mr. McBride, my predecessor, took that deal. And we were able to upgrade a lot of stuff, a lot of things that needed to be upgraded. So, yep, I was around as the principal at the time.
And then behind tab 5 is our capital projects fund. We have only 2 capital projects funds. We've maintained our building and site fund, and so we put some extra revenues that we pick up from rental. We rent out the bus barn property, for instance. We own it, but the bus barn uses it, so they pay us rent. That kind of revenue comes into Fund 401. On occasion, if we are lucky enough to get a seismic grant, that money comes into Fund 401 as well. If we were to successfully pass a bond in the fall, the revenue would also come into this fund, as would the expenditures. And then Fund 406 is the construction excise tax. We have a construction excise tax in our district, and so it has not been throwing off a lot of revenue for us lately, but we don't spend much out of it on the regular, but it does have a balance of about $1.47 million in it currently. So we use that mostly. We're kind of restricted on how we use that, but it's usually on facilities improvements that are a direct result from growth. So if we need some classroom expansion, we can buy some desks with that. But the last few things that we've used that fund for include parking lot expansions at both Cloverdale and Turner Elementary School. And then the final fund, we're one of the few funds in the district that have a 700 fund called the Endowment Fund. And this is for the pool. So when Mr. Birkeland passed away, he gave the school district some money, as well as the city of Turner some money to hold in endowment. We can't spend the corpus or the principal of that money. We can only spend the interest on it. So we don't spend a lot of money out of there, and we've just been kind of sitting it, and we credit it with interest, and we have started with $100,000 a number of years ago, and it's now up to $143,000. But we can only spend 43,000 of that, and that is only for pool improvements.
We also have to work with the city to have that conversation, because they have a part of it, we have a part of it, so. About 10 years ago, 8 years ago, the previous city manager was very interested in taking over the pool. I was happy to let them, so if anybody have ever had a pool, and after he did a little research, he decided that was a bad idea. So we've continued to work together, and I appreciate that. So, but the upside is to that very old pool. I think we probably saved some lives over the many years by teaching lots of kids how to swim, and that's been a good thing. All right, great. I'm just going to check on get caught up on our slide presentation. Hard to click the slides and talk at the same time. We talked about that. Budget message. Oh yeah, this is the thing. You're almost up. Okay, you say so. Just wait a second to get caught up here. I did want to highlight that in our special revenue funds, we have a few new funds. The Fund 229, the mentor grant, that is a fund that we've had before, but we reactivated it. It's been inactive. And we also started a new fund for next year. We're calling it the substitute fund, and that has about $250,000 in it, and that is to pay for some of the long-term subs that we've been getting recently. It's not quite enough, but when we go down and talk about a little bit of our budget challenges, we'll learn a little bit more about those long-term subs and their impact on our general fund budget. So we're trying to mitigate that. And then some of the funds that have been inactive that are still showing up in your book, Oregon Budget Law says that as long as they are within the last 2 years, we've had experience or expenses in the last 2 years, we need to present that in the budget. After 2 years, we can take them out of the budget.
But you will see funds 208, 209, the 251 and 241. Three of those funds, well, actually, all four of those funds are COVID related funds that we no longer have. We have not received money from their revenue sources in a number of years. We don't expect to, so we're going to let those go away. They are officially inactive, and then next year at this time, you will not see them in the budget. And then those are the debt service funds. We talked about those. And okay, and that's the layout of how the fund process works. We always report on actuals for 2 years, the current year adopted budget, and our proposed budget. After tonight's meeting, this budget in front of you will become approved if you approve it tonight. And then after the board deliberates on the budget next month at their general meeting, and there'll be another public hearing, it will be an adopted budget. The only rules are you can meet, this group can meet as many times as it needs to. The only rules are is that it has to be adopted and appropriated by June 30th. About that. Okay, so right now, Mr. Drill will present the budget message, and that is behind page A. It's page A behind tab 1.
So, Mr. Pillar got to explain all the fun stuff. I get to start with the dirty details about the 25-26 budget. So, I put in there, probably the first paragraph is probably the most important piece of it. We are kind of at two places at one time. What I mean by that is that we have a budget that for the first time in 7 or 8 years, we are going to need to take money out of reserves to be able to cover our budget. At the same time, we have prepared for this so that we, unlike other school districts, don't have to say we need to make massive cuts or take jobs away or cut days or some sort of combination of that. So for those of you who've been around for a long time, way back in 2008-9, when the first big, huge recession hit, that was my first year as a superintendent. And I truly still didn't know what I was doing. And I was told that, oh, you got a little over $1 million in cash carryover, you're good to go. By by April, the state of Oregon was saying, yeah, not only do you not have enough money, we're actually going to take money between now and the end of June. And so we ended up over the last few years, between 2008 to about 2011, we cut days, we cut staff, we zeroed out all kinds of balances, and we literally just crawled along. There were a couple moments in meetings where the amount in cash carryover, we were, the business manager at the time and I were watching to when the state would give us money and to when the paychecks would go out. Because if that wasn't timed right, we would have insufficient funds. So we started at that point, and as we grew and the economy got better, we said, never again, we're not going to do that. And so over time, what we have done is tried to build up our accounts so that when we knew when the bad times would come, and we really thought when the very first part of COVID hit, that might have been the time. Turns out lots of money was handed over. And at the very same time we grew as a district, we ended up with not a surplus, but more money than we had seen for probably the entirety of a consolidated school district at Cascade. So fast forward 3 or 4 years, the money from ESSER funds and COVID and the money we got in growth, we had spent on our staff. We had spent on making sure we built programs, and we also did save some funds. And so when I say that we are at a place right now where we cannot sustain we cannot sustain by just saying, hey, we're just going to spend what they give us because of a couple of reasons. First and foremost, and Scott will talk about a little bit more, is the PERS issue that came up. And Scott's going to go deeper into the why, but just let me say that every employee enjoys the PERS retirement. Very few of us are left in that very top tier 1, which is what you heard about over the last 25 years about how great the retirement was and how well that worked. There are very few of us left. I'm one of those, but myself and a year behind me, and then that's it. Then we moved to tier 2, where the deal wasn't as good. And then most employees now are an OPSERV, which is a retirement fund that really says, hey, this is like a pension. You should also be thinking about other types of retirements to help you package it in along with Social Security to help you get through your retirement years. So what PERS has done is basically say to us, the cost of that is going to go up fairly high. A little over 20 years ago or so, this school district with that board at the time, along with Mr. McBride, my predecessor, went out and got bonds to cover the PERS costs, and those bonds worked tremendously well. Over the last 18 or so years, those bonds have probably saved Cascade School District between $8 and $10 million. So every time that there was an increase in PERS, we would say, hey, we got bonds and we made money on those bonds from the stock market and wherever else that they played those. And that difference that we made, we could use that towards the cost of PERS. So the actual cost to Cascade was minimal, but the overall cost was much more. Well, fast forward to where we're down to the very end of that bond, and there's not enough money left to cover that increase. So here we are having to go up, and Scott will talk about the amounts and how much. As I say in here, from June 30th to July 1st, in 24 hours, we will suddenly pay over $2 million, almost $2.5 million more just for retirement. We didn't do anything. It was nobody's fault. We didn't miss a deadline. It's just, this is how much more we're going to have to pay. So that's issue number one. Scott also mentioned that he put some money in an account to cover long-term people that are out for long-term. So for this year, good, bad, or otherwise, we had, I don't know, it felt like 295 babies, but it felt probably was more like 12 or 14. And so people were out for extended periods of time. So we were paying them if they had their sick leave to be gone and paying somebody else to cover. Add to that the new leave laws with Oregon, and you could get extended family leave and extended Oregon leave and all the other leaves to go with it. At one point, we figured out that we were funding almost 12 additional teaching positions in our
Full
budget.
FTEs
Full FTEs.
with health insurance.
With health insurance. So suddenly we are, and that's not what we budgeted for. The other thing is that the unemployment, particularly for our classified folks, which was signed into law, is that our classified folks, while they work and get a paycheck for 12 months in the summertime, they can apply for unemployment by law. And so they get a check as well. And we're going to watch that number go up. The final thing was that of the three things was that this is the first year in 7 years that we didn't get bigger. The building of homes around our area finally kind of been exhausted, and there's no new brand new developments going in yet. There's talk, but nothing has gone in yet. So we this year kind of flattened out. We started 45 kids lighter than we did a year ago. Last year we kind of spiked up and came right back down. This year we kind of started this way and we've held. We are now, as of February, starting to be just ahead of the number that we were this time last year. We're about 30 kids ahead. So that's a 75 kids swing from last year. But the time that we were below the number means that if you average it out, we will not be ahead by the end of the year. That means no additional funding is coming from the state because we get paid a little over $11,000 per kid. That's how we fund the process. Add all those three things up and suddenly we are at a place where we need to turn and look at our reserves to be able to get us through for next year. The upside is we have them. The downside is that reserves, like your bank account, like your savings account, once you use it, it doesn't just automatically replenish. It goes away, and we're going to have to work at figuring that out. So just today in this room, about 3 hours ago, sat with all the administrators, some of which are behind you. And they got the fun of hearing me say, time to make cuts and time to figure out if there's ways for us to sweep money for the remainder of this year and take a look at next year as to how you can do your job with fewer dollars. And that is the only way we're going to be able to, one, survive this budget, and then two, continue on for years to come, because we need to be able to do and operate with less. We are hopeful that the state of Oregon, who is still in the legislative session, and still holding on $11.34 billion, which sounds like just an astronomical amount of money for education and is a huge increase from a year before. But when you take that number and break it down, that's about $2 million more. And Scott and I already mentioned, we're going to spend more than $2 million just in PERS. We are also in negotiations right now with both of our associations Actually, all three, because our administrative team then waits to see what we do with the other two, and they usually roll along with it. And so we have a very minimal increase for that as well. And let alone any roll-up costs, because heat and lights don't go down, they just go up. So we're gonna have to take a look at those numbers and figure out how to budget that. So what we have tried to accomplish over the last couple of months is to figure out a way to build a budget that preserves the classroom as much as we can. So our goal is to take a look at what we do and try to save, one, as many adults as we can, because they serve kids, right? And two, not cut into the things that we do for kids in the classroom. So while I did say to the administrators today, you've got a principal account or this account, can you do with less, right? Our goal is to try to figure out how to make sure that, for example, Almsville has 24 regular classroom teachers, that when we start next year, they will have 24 regular classroom teachers. Turner has 18, Cloverdale has 9, the junior high and senior high, I don't have the exact number in my head, but we want to make sure that every teacher is there, and we want to make sure that we have as many classified folks as we can. The last part is that we are concerned at the federal level that money is not going to come to education. It has been made clear, as a matter of fact, the goal at that level at this time is to close down the Department of Education. Now, I get people that tell me, oh, it's okay, the money's going to come to you in block grants. It might, but not at the same amount. And if somebody can show me that, because I've had a couple of people kind of challenge me on that, my response is, show me. Nobody's been able to show me because nobody really knows. We have been told, for example, we get a number of title program amounts of money from the federal government. Title is for poor students and students that don't do well in reading and math, right? We have been told plan on a flat budget. That is not an increase. And of the 4 or 5 different titles, 1 or 2 of them will not exist next year. That money will be gone. So we need to figure out a way to be prepared that when that money goes away, how do we balance that? We do use some title funds to pay for people, but we can't just shuffle those people into another fund. You're setting yourself up to get to an edge of a cliff and then fall off. So our goal will be, as we take a look and see what title is actually willing to support, we will need to take a look at who's in title. Every year, because there are 350 or so employees at Cascade, we're going to have some retirements, we're going to have some people that leave, and through attrition, we will try to move people over. And our goal is to not let go of anybody at all for this upcoming year. And hope that, one, we grow just a little, and two, that the state of Oregon, while they're still in legislative session, might give us a little bit more. We're going to find out some big information on Wednesday, because they will put out a report to find out financially where the state of Oregon is. They do that quarterly, I believe. And we're hopeful that it's at least flat or it's up a little bit, though everybody tells me, it's going down. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So we're waiting around for our legislature to finish up. That's an unknown. We're waiting around to finish up our negotiations with our classified and certified. When we've had money over the last 5 or 6 years, I feel like, maybe our associations would say differently. We feel like we have done well with them. Over the last 4 years, we have given almost a 26% increase to our classified and a 23% increase to our certified, our teaching staff. We now boast the highest paid brand new teacher salary in the mid-Tri-County area of Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties. We are ahead of Salem across the board. And in our mid-range teachers, we are 3rd out of the 21 districts, and are 4th. And our top end teachers, we are 3rd. Some of you have been around long enough to remember, Mrs. Stevens, that we were way near the bottom of that. So we are very proud of the fact that we can turn and pay our people a real solid wage. But we're at a place this year where we're going to have to look at our associations and say, when we had the money, we gave it to you. Right now, we don't. And the first move in negotiations is always that, do you really not have the money? And so we're going to have to work through that process and make sure that we are clear with them that, no, we really don't have that kind of cash this year. So that is my budget message. Everything is in accordance with state law. We followed all the processes. The nice part about having a veteran business manager is that He understands this process very well and it makes my job fairly easy. Do you all have any questions of me at this time?
I got a question.
Yeah.
On the cash carryover that we talked about a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought we had a policy where we had to carry a certain percentage.
We do have a policy that we have to carry a certain percentage. I'm not looking at it right at the moment. It's right around 4, 5, 6%.
I think it's 6%.
And if you will find this, today, we are just at that level. So
So, okay, with that being said, if we're gonna say, hey, we've got all this cash carryover, we can dump it into the PERS or dump it into these other funds. What does that do to the policy we have that requires us to carry 6? If we take it and shift it somewhere else, we fall outside of our policy.
you'd have to rewrite your policy.
What if we don't want it?
Then we'd have to talk about making more cuts with
Right,
regard to staff or days or things
right,
like that.
because.
Now, with the cuts that we put in here.
Yeah.
We are still at 6%.
We're 6.
Yes.
Okay.
What I shared with board members individually earlier this month, late last month, was that we were below that number. We have spent time in the last 3 weeks trying to find, from a district standpoint, I guess, the change in the couch cushions, right? And we have been able to move that number up from 5% to 6%.
Right.
So
My,
we
my
found
concern, just looking at it without getting in the weeds on this, is it's a very short-sighted solution if we say, hey, let's eliminate that or move it from 6 to 2 or whatever.
Sure.
And dump all that cash into it, like you already said, our piggy bank's not gonna fill itself back up, and someday it's gonna rain.
my hope is, Brett, and I appreciate the comment, my hope is that we can guide that debt to a place where over time, when we lose somebody through attrition, we evaluate seriously whether or not we want that person back, and then we make the adjustments accordingly. So we kind of step down without hurting somebody's job or hurting a program too much. We thin it as we go. If we find in November that that's not gonna work, then we do have time for that school year to let somebody know come June of 26, right? You may not have a position here.
Okay, so another question, and this is for you, Mr. Pillar, you may not know off the top of your head, behind tab 2, one of your fabulous graphs, which are amazing, thank you. It shows that currently our salary is at 46% of total budget.
Which page are you referring to?
It's on tab 2, it's about page 6, page 5. Round, it's got the maroon, keep going, that one maybe, yeah.
Yep.
46%, see that in the big box, the big red one?
I do.
So the question I have is, if you had to guess, what was that number last year of salary? Was it 46? Are we trending? I mean, is it, how, I know we put.
Actually, the next page has the expenditures from the prior year, 24, 25. So last year it was
47. And I asked that because you already said that over the last few years, we've done a 23 and a 26% pay increase.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming we haven't always been running at 47%. It was running substantially less than that when we were running 23% less for pay.
Well, actually, essentially those pay increases came as our revenues increased. We weren't able to give that much more of a bigger jump. I mean, we were probably at, and I could certainly go and research this before kind of pre-COVID and then after COVID. But really that extra cash and our enrollment growth, if you remember last year's budget was all about, or the year prior was all about this big story being enrollment growth. Enrollment covers a lot of sins, right? So when you have more students coming in, you're able to do a lot more with salaries, and we've been maintaining the FTE, even though we were having significant classroom size.
But we offset it by the increase in tuition.
And
Help
yes,
pay for that.
and now so it was a conscious decision really the last couple of years to give those larger rate increases, and we were able to afford those at the time. So I would think that as a percentage of our expenditures, 47% is roughly about average for other districts. And I would think that we're gonna be pretty close to
That's
that
the wheelhouse we want
in
to
the last,
right there.
yeah, it's not
Okay.
too far away.
Then
from
I'm gonna hold that thought and we'll come back to it.
Okay. Thank you for that question. I hope I answered it.
You answered it perfectly. Thank you.
I guess my additional comment on that, Brett, would be that, if I can't be quoted on it, but I want to say we were right around 42, 43% 10, 12 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But, and we have grown, like Scott said, as a percentage of the total amount of money, right? It's grown a little bit faster, but because of the student growth, we've added more staff.
Sure. No, I understand. I'm just trying to wrap my head around,
No,
around,
that's a good
just like the full-time equivalent that we asked about, just to see what our numbers are doing.
Right.
Oh, how we're trending.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so when we talk about, oh, yes. go
One
ahead.
question. So what are, on that same graph, what are purchase services?
Purchase services are anything that we buy that is intended, it's everything, including electricity, water, garbage, utilities, but it also includes. If we have a person coming in and providing training services, will also purchase services include. Yeah, just any purchase service that doesn't have supplies in it. It's not curriculum, but yeah, mostly operating.
So is that like the janitors?
Well, we do buy janitorial through Total Solutions. So for janitorial services are done here, and that is a purchase service.
That would fall under there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This also includes like WESD, those kind of services, or does that?
Now, the WESD, that's a really good question. The WESD stands in support of all of our services. They provide services through us through a process called the local service plan. And so that is a separate pot of money that they keep on their books. We don't have to do the books on that, thank goodness. Yes, exactly. So they provide us with essentially a credit or a bank account. We can buy services from them.
We wrapped that up in early April, and I
Yeah.
think ours was about 1.2 million.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's
our
about right.
percentage.
Yeah. So,
We spent it all but about $10,000.
yeah. And we
Mostly,
actually,
mostly in special education services, which
Yeah.
is what it is. What that means is, like, if you needed a specialist in autism, but we don't need a full-time person, right? So Cascade, State, and Jefferson could go in together and buy a percentage of that person. And so that person has a full-time job with the ESD, but they go to 3 different districts in the course of their week, so to speak. I hope that makes sense.
so when we're talking about this year, before I start summarizing kind of what this budget actually looks like, we have to talk a little bit about last year's budget. Last year, well, actually, it's the current year's budget, which we're currently in right now, 24-25. And these are some of the adopted budget characteristics. Many of you were here when you heard us, that we often put together a conservative budget for your use. And I'll tell you a little bit about what conservative means in my parlance. And this conservative budget had what I would consider decent performance. As a business manager, I often rank the performance of our budget. How close did we get to actual expenditures, actual revenues, those types of things. And ours was decent. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. On our revenue side, we are predicted or expected to spend 99.4%, or we are expected to receive 99.4% of revenue. So that's very close. I'll take those odds any day. We had a larger than a typical beginning fund balance. Okay, so
Last July 1st, right?
yeah, that's the beginning fund balance of the current year that we're in on July 1st. Much larger than typical, and we were very grateful for that because it really saved our bacon. But the other thing that we noticed is that we had a flattening enrollment, as Mr. Drill said. Our enrollment had been growing pretty steadily and pretty significantly for a district our size. And we saw some flattening, and actually, as Mr. Drill said, we started out low and we're just now kind of starting to get back up. So we are technically in what the area called safe harbor from a school funding standpoint, and that was a little bit unexpected. On the expense side, we had larger than expected health benefit utilization. Without going into too much of the weeds, our employees, licensed employees, get to choose which level. They have a tiered benefit approach, and they get to choose if they want to fund healthcare for their entire family, or just for themselves, or just for their spouse, however, whatever station in life they are. My job is to guess what they're going to pick next year, and sometimes I guess a little bit off. Not perfect at that. So we had a little, I expected them to pick a little lower, and they picked a little higher. Also with the temporary teachers, that we have, they also got to pick some health insurance, and I picked 0 for them, and so whatever they picked, I guessed wrong. The significant increase in long-term leave costs, substitutes, and that cost us about 1.3. And then those costs are still coming in, so that might actually go up a little bit before the end of the year. And we had 101% of current year budget expenses without contingency expected. So we are spending about 1 percentage point more this current year in our expenses predicted. We do a lot of spending for the last 2 months, as Mr. Drill said today. All of the staff, including my department, the fiscal department, I just got my budget cut by Mr. Drill. We are hopefully going to stem that. So that 101% does not take into consideration the cuts we are making between now and the end of the year and 6 weeks of the year. So hopefully we can get that down a little bit. And then finally, the result of that is that utilization of the beginning fund balance. Now, without again going in too deep, but if you had any questions about that, we started the year at $5.6 million, and we're going to hopefully end the year at $4.0 million. So that's a $1.6 million reduction. Interestingly, that's right, kind of in alignment with the increase in long-term sub costs and the healthcare utilization. So that's kind of where we end up pointing the finger. Talk about that. As Mr. Siegel said, yes, you do have a policy that is 6% ending fund balance. This number, even 4%, is going to come in about 8% of our revenue picture. So we're well within policy for that $4 million. What we're going to start with this budget is we're going to start the year with $4 million. We're going to probably end up having to drop that back down to $3 million and change, which is the 6%. So it's going to be, we're going to hold tight to that number. So these are the proposed budget challenges for this year. On the revenue side, we talked a little bit about that. It's a reduced beginning fund balance. We don't know what the state school fund is going to be. We predict it to be $11.4 billion over 2 years. It's unknown, our federal revenue, whether it's going to be reduced or flat. The property tax growth rate is something that we don't really talk about very often. But in Oregon, we're capped at a 3% growth rate in that amount of property tax revenue, unless new houses are being built or people are remodeling. As you probably know, if you're trying to refinance a house or sell a house or know someone who has, that market has quieted down quite a bit. There's not a lot of building going on. There's not new homes going in. Because of that, we are really, that property tax revenue is capped for us at a 3% growth rate. 3 years ago, it was 6.5%. So that growth rate has cut down pretty significantly, and we can't get that money back. Oops. On the expense side, we have some significant first cost increases. I did a calculation of weighted cost averaging, and our cost increase, it's over double. It's 103.5% increase, totaling approximately $2.5 million across all funds. We'll talk a little bit more in about why that is and how other districts are impacted by the same issue. Unknown salary roll-up costs due to negotiations. We don't know what those are. We just started those. Price increases beyond the CPI due to economic uncertainty. We paid real close attention to price increases around here. Everything from electricity to things that we buy, purchase services and supplies. Those prices have just been wildly up and down with the tariff discussions and those types of things. Right now, we're seeing significant price increases all across the board for everything in our market. It's really challenging. And the other part that we need to address is our continued facilities and maintenance needs. It's no secret we're considering a bond for this fall. And we're very, me personally, speaking with my personal hat on, very hopeful that it passes. Simply because, as Mr. Drill had said to me earlier, we can spend about as much as we can, but as much as we have on our facilities. Our facilities are older. Our roofs are leaking. We've got some real challenges in a lot of different places. Our HVAC needs, major upgrades. those types of things. And so we, if you look in the budget, you will see some of the expenditures. We are spending significant amounts of revenue on facilities upgrades. And really, there is no stop to that. I mean, we can continue to do it or just not and hope for the best. The result of that is a particularly tight, what we're calling a basics budget. And that's what I'm putting in front of you today is a basics budget. And those characteristics of that budget is a real sharpened emphasis on teaching and learning with a focus on preservation of staff. We have a moderation of roll-up costs. Now, we don't have a lot of control over that. We're going to be in negotiations, but it's going to be a challenging negotiations time, I'm sure. We have no FTE additions in this budget. If we do have reductions, if needed, it's by program-centered attrition. Mr. Joel talked a little bit about that. That is if we have staff in a title program that has a reduction in funding, we may not be able to, protect that particular person's job. If we have another job that leaves by attrition, they might be able to fill into that area. That's not a guarantee. We're not going to be able to backfill special programs, SIA, high school success title programs. We're not going to be able to fill those with general fund dollars. The general fund just doesn't have enough revenue to support that. Moderate use of reserves and savings to preserve current programs. We were very fortunate a number of years ago, we put together a savings account for PERS reserves. And we have about $3.1 million in that account. The time is to use it. It's a rainy day fund and it is rainy. Moderate reduction of ending fund balance down to 6%. We talked about that. Exploring enrollment options that impact revenue. We have a cap on our enrollment. It's a debated thing. The board's worked on this for a number of years. There's lots of pluses and minuses to it. But perhaps it's time to reopen that discussion because all of those people, all of the new students that we do let in does provide operating revenue for us.
Did we hit the ceiling on anything this year? Did we hit our?
We hit the ceiling on most grades at most schools.
Is that right?
Most.
Even though you said you were fairly flat.
We were flat. There are, it's interesting. We have some space openings, particularly at the kindergarten level, because as if you read some articles, right, there are fewer kindergartners. They're not just that people have left public ed. There have been some, but the reality is that there are fewer babies. And that's across the United States.
Right.
So it is interesting. Every grade level from 2nd grade to 12th grade starts with a 2. There's 200 and some odd kids. When I first started, every one of them started with a 1, right? But this year, from 2nd grade to 12th grade, they all started with a 2, except for 1st grade has 193 and kindergarten has 151. So we'll see what that looks like. And we noticed that last year's kindergarten was about 160, it jumped to 191. So we'll see more people bring their kids to 1st grade than hold on to it for kindergarten. And then they'll go from there. So we'll see how that goes. But as of yesterday, that's Sunday, as of Friday, we had almost 85 people in line that are outside of our district that want to come to Cascade.
So while we're flat, we could increase were we to open that ceiling up.
We could, but
Then you'd have to fight with it.
it's the same conversation about going out for a bond. Why would we pay for somebody who doesn't pay taxes here? Blah, 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 blah. I get it.
Right.
But for every child, it's $11,000.
Right.
For every 10 kids, it's $110,000. You're almost saving a staff member for adding to a position.
Can we make out of district kids bring their own chairs?
I don't know about that.
Maybe write that into the contract.
Exactly.
That's the thought.
Hang on.
Something if you want.
And lunch.
What Scott said about that is what I think we're gonna look at is to find where you guys set limits for every grade and every school. That's what we do. We're gonna do that tonight. It's essentially the same. If we have space, right, what we've said to people before at the beginning years, we don't have any space in 3rd grade at Turner. Sorry, we can't do it. We get to Christmas time because we have trimesters, people will knock on the door again. And what we've said for the last couple of years to keep that number down is sorry, we're full. We're not adding more kids. 5 years ago, which we were coming out of the old budget crisis, 8 years ago, we said, hey, at Christmas time, we will accept. Right. And so those numbers continue to creep up. The biggest growth that we had over the last 8 years is just the houses that were built. I mean, people they'll look at me and say, it's because of all those transfer kids, I'm like, yeah, the numbers don't show that. What the number really is how many people actually move to Cascade. And that's what happens, yeah.
Do we have a projected number for kindergarten for next year yet? Is that?
They're doing
in place?
roundups, they're doing
Okay.
roundups right now,
Okay,
and so they're
But
working
no-
on that process.
okay, but we don't have a number yet.
We
Exactly.
have more kinders pre-registered this year than we did at this time last year.
Okay,
And generally, the deal has been with kinder pre-registration, that gives us probably about 50% of what we think we're gonna get, but it's a guess.
mhm.
This is not an area that does a great job with preschools. That's not the kind of thing, and Cascade School District gets $0 for a preschool. I don't know how many times people have asked me, do a preschool, I'm like, I don't have the money for that. Our vision and our job is kindergarten through 12th grade. Plus our help for our 18 to 21-year-olds that qualify for that.
If we're low in kindergarten and we make that decision to let transfers in, are we also letting their freshman sibling in also?
If there's space, but the reality is, particularly from 6th grade all the way to 11th grade, there isn't space.
Okay,
You have a cap, that's where it's at. We don't go past that cap. You guys said it, so that made my world a whole lot easier.
Continuing with aggressively seeking a bond renewal, that would be something that I think would help our district a lot, particularly on the facilities and maintenance cost side. And then monitoring a new site account establishment. That's an important one that we'll talk about a little bit later, just to kind of give you an idea of why we're in the spot we're in. So along this line, our proposed budget summary, these are some selected assumptions. So we based our the school fund on the $11.36 billion legislative allocation. That's behind tab 1, page G to H. If you looked at that a little bit. 1% increase year over year in enrollment. That 1% increase is a little bit, it sounds small, or it could be big however you take a look at it, but the 1% increase in enrollment is actually what we predicted for the current year's enrollment. And that equates to about 38 kids. Now, where we're at currently, right now, today, as we said, with students with butts in chairs, we are actually almost at the level of enrollment that we're predicting for next year. Okay, so that one increase year over year enrollment, if we have more kids that come in by October, by what's called the October count, we can go to the state and say, hey, we have more kids, and so therefore we deserve a little bit more state school fund. So just so you know, that process used to be a 6-month or a 1-year turnaround. Now it's a quarterly turnaround, so we can adjust to it. So
What's nice about that is, as I said, our numbers has really stayed the same. We haven't been higher or lower than like 8 kids the entire year. And what's weird about that, or unique, I should say unique, I use the word weird too much, is that traditionally our numbers are higher in the fall. They peak out right around Christmas time, and then they begin to slide down. And every year, and a year ago, as I said, it really spiked up and came down. It was almost like a mountain peak. Usually it's more like a rolling hill. This year it started low and just stayed there. And so at some point, whenever time comes, we've just continued to stay right across. Like we gained 2 kids this week. That's so weird. It's the most random thing. I said weird again. It's the most random thing I've ever seen. So does that mean that we're more stable and less people move in and out? It appears that way. Right, that also could be a sign that the economy is a little more unstable and people don't like the idea of making a move. So that helps us because technically we said to the state for next year, here's the number, we're already slightly ahead of that number. And that's a good sign for us, assuming that holds when we get into next year with having kids show up. We'll see how that goes.
the state grants, high school success, SIA, et cetera, predicted allocations. And so we don't even actually have those allocations firmly yet from the state of Oregon, but we're going on the governor's projected budget on both of those, on those extra state side grants. And then on the expenditure side, we had minimal COLA increases and steps if eligible for all bargaining groups. And then our PERS rates increases, these are some real numbers for you. So for every dollar of payroll, the current year we were paying 11.8% of payroll for PERS 1 and 2 members, and then 8.3% of payroll for OPSERV members. Those numbers jump up respectively to 21.3% and 18.3% for OPSERV members. Again, that is that number that's over double in as a weighted average, and that's going to cost us about $2.6 million next year, starting July 1 for no other.
And is that projected to just stay in forever?
No, that's a 2-year,
Then what?
that's a really good
Go up
question.
again.
It could go up again or it could go down again. We're hoping, we'll talk about the side accounts, and the board has heard me talk about side accounts and where we're at, why we don't have one to backfill the one that's expiring. But hopefully within 2 years, it gives us some time or a window of opportunity to go out and get another side account that will hopefully lower and control those rates for us. I'd highly recommend the district do that. If the timing is right, we'll talk a little bit more about that. All roll-up costs are tied to position-based budgeting. The position-based budgeting is a program that we've implemented a number of years ago, and it's been very, very helpful for us. That is, we don't fund the person, we fund the position. And all of our controls are based on how many positions we have, not who are in those particular boxes. And the budgeted ending fund balance reduced from 9.75, so that's what we budgeted last year, was at 9.75, or current year. When I keep saying last year, I've been so much into this, I apologize. Last year really means the current year that we're sitting in. And so that our current year budget was 9.75 ending fund balance, and then we're going to drop that down to 6.0. So we're going to utilize some of that ending fund balance. So briefly tried to describe what a side account is and how it impacts PERS rates. So districts, in consortium with other districts, we have the ability to issue debt through bond sales without voter approval in certain situations. So most of the time when we get a bond, it's a capital bond. We have to go out and ask the voters to approve it. However, in certain situations, like borrowing against PERS, we can do that without voter approval, and we just go on our full faith and credit of our credit worthiness as a school district. The proceeds then of those side account, those bond sales, are given to PERS, and PERS invests that effectively, and this effectively prepays our future pension liabilities. And those proceeds are called a side account. So we put in a little over 20 years ago, we put in $14 million in our side account. So we prepaid our PERS rates, prepaid our PERS liabilities with some of that money. PERS uses the side account's corpus of the 14 million plus all the interest that they earn on that 14 million to offset pension rates, typically over a 20-year amortization. The districts with side accounts receive a credit on their pension liabilities, but must pay principal and interest on the bonds that are issued. So the combined payment, so we actually pay debt service on our PERS bond. That's, in the budget, that's the $2 million every year we pay for that. So we're still paying for that for 2 more years. And then, but we received a credit on our pension liabilities. And those two costs combined is still less expensive, typically, if the market rates are good and over time. Those two combined are less expensive by 9, sometimes as much as 9 percentage points, not 9%, 9 percentage points over going, with a non-side account. So that's where we get that $8 to $9 million savings over that 20-year period. So it was really a really great idea, and it helps us because it maintains a lower PERS rate that we can plan on. The downside to this particular thing, it's one of the reasons why it is such a problem, is because this year the side accounts, they were all set up, or 20 years ago, they were all set up with certain assumptions as to payroll growth, how the market was going to do, how much investment, how much of the corpus they were going to have to use over 20 years. And the target with all those assumptions was to get that money down to about zero 22 years into the future.
Right.
Okay. We are now 20 years into the future, and that side account is about gone. Because our PERS or our payroll has grown, not just in the last few years, but over time, higher than they assumed it was gonna grow. And then the other issue that they had is that, market rates, the stock market, investment returns, that kind of thing, have been up and down. Unfortunately, the last couple years, it's been down. Plus, our payroll growth, like many other districts, have been going up the last few years. And those last few years is when our corpus, the amount left in that original $44 million allocation, is significantly lower because they've been using it for 15 years, right? So we don't have enough money in there to earn interest on it. Even if we were getting 25% returns from the market, there's not enough corpus there for us to catch up. So that's the problem. And that's one of the reasons why so many districts, there's a number of districts, and I think I calculated it's 125 other districts. That just talks about the timing. 125 other districts have side accounts that are negatively impacted, some more aggressively than others. We are one of the higher, more aggressively impacted districts in terms of percentage rates. But school districts like Gladstone, Candy has a huge impact with this. A couple of others in the northern Willamette Valley that I can think of off the top of my head, just peers that I communicate with on the regular, are having. I mean, they're cutting days. It's.
And what are we
really
paying for this?
significant.
2 million a year, you said?
Our debt service is about $2 million a year.
And we have how many more years?
2 more years on this debt.
So after 2 years, then we'll essentially have that 2 million that we can put directly into these PERS accounts.
Yes,
It's a push in 2 years.
it is.
So the next 2 years, we're doubling up because we got to pay them plus the offset the difference.
Exactly.
But the difference has been over the last 20 years, we've saved somewhere right around $9 million.
Right. No, I follow you on that. Yeah, because what you said is you're borrowing essentially 14 million to dump it into the stock market to get the gains on it, and you pay 2 million a year as your fee for borrowing that 14 million up front.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 2 years of doubling up, and then if all things stay equal, we can take that same premium money and just put it into the PERS, and it's a push.
Yeah.
All things stay
Or if the
equal.
market gets better. The
You would buy
agreement that the
another one.
board would have to agree to would be to buy another.
Right, and then
Or
a
good,
crystal
or
ball
bad.
would be really handy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's super handy.
Yeah.
So our response has been, our response was we created a PERS reserve fund, Fund 269, in your book, I think page 71. And we started that in 2019, 2020. We used the budgeted beginning fund balance this year is about $3.1 million for that. So we have a PERS reserve fund for a rainy day. We're proposing in this budget to use a portion of that. In fact, we proposed in this budget to use up to $2 million, leaving 1.1 million in the PERS reserve for future years. Now, one of the things to consider that, we're using more than half of it in this budget. However, we're not going to see that same bump next year because that same rate stays the same. It stays flat. So it's not going to, we don't actually have to pay more to get that.
Right.
To get that same.
We're just short $900,000. We've got 3,
Oh.
used 2, we only got 1.1 left.
Yes, exactly. We have
We'll have the same
1.1.
bill due next year.
We'll have the same, but the following year.
Yeah.
So 1 more year out for that. But also at that time, we will also have roll-up costs from our state school fund because we do a 49.51% split. So really, we're trying to get through this year.
Right.
And hoping for the best. We have met with Piper Sandler representatives, private bankers, and PERS representatives to pursue new accounts. And when I say we, it's the collective we, me and 100 of my closest friends and colleagues have been meeting on the regular for that. Right now, for side accounts to work, borrowing rates must be lower and relatively stable. That is not happening currently. Bond rates are going up and down relatively
And nothing
wildly.
is stable.
Yeah,
Yes.
nothing is too stable. Current rate is locked in for 2 years. A normal rate, if we weren't having side accounts, would be 27.8% for PERS members and 25.3% for OPSERV members. So you can see, you know, with our rates, we're not actually you know, you can see how much little impact our side account is really having. So to look for the future, we agree that we need to really sharpen our financial focus on teaching and learning, coupled with strong fiscal discipline. I'm personally recommending a good general obligation bond to manage growth and provide maintenance and cost relief. Also, continue to advocate for adequate funding for K-12 school districts. Everybody in this room is a good, strong advocate for funding for K-12 education. We believe strongly in it. I think we need to continue to advocate loudly and proudly. And also, I think it's important to, you know, not be so doom and gloom. We have to accept the fact that we do really great work for students here. This is a really, really great school district, and our numbers show it and prove it all the time. And so we need to continue to do that great educating of students and be responsible to our taxpayers and other stakeholders. So along with that, we now are at a point in the agenda, Mr. Chair, that you can take any questions for either Darren or myself or each other about the budget and the proposed budget that we're talking about.
All right. With that being said, number 7, does anyone on the budget committee have questions that they would like to address at this time? Got to be at least one.
I have a question.
There we are.
It's not I know the money wouldn't add up to anything that we're talking about, but is there any monies left in those inactive accounts? Because I know at some point they had some pretty good money in them.
Yes, if they do have any money, some of those inactive accounts, we are required to do the same type of work, you know, if we made them active. But if there are any funds left in them, we just transfer them to the general fund.
Okay, that's me.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not that much though.
Yeah, I
It isn't
figured.
worth really noting that
Okay.
much, but yeah, we certainly don't let them go away.
So I'm going to ask a silly question. So I'm going to come back to this, where we've got 46% of the general fund expenditures are for salary.
Mhm.
Do any districts have policies that state their salaries are capped at a percentage, where a district say, hey, 46% is as high as we will allow. We're going into negotiations. That's great. Good luck. But we're capping it at 46%.
Not to my knowledge.
No, they don't do it that way, but when you take that and the benefits and put it together, most districts run somewhere between 78 to 84%, depending.
Right. And no, I understand. I'm just wondering if it's possible to say, hey, because of the budget issues we're dealing with, we're going to minimize, maximize, put a line in the sand on what our salaries are going to be, period. And so negotiations are what they are, but we have to stay within that threshold, just like we have a 6% cash carryover. We can't just give that money away. It's got to be there for next year.
Mhm.
Do we have the ability to put a cap on salary?
In theory,
On saying, hey,
in theory, yes.
47%. So if we get $11.6 billion, we get if it's 10.6, what it is,
Mhm.
we're capping our salary at 47%.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Right. You could do it that way. The downside is over time, right? If others are higher, the quality of your.
Sure, no, I
education
understand all that. I'm just thinking for now, when we're looking down the barrel of budget
Sure.
issues,
Mhm.
is it feasible to say, we're putting the top on it? We have to.
I think one way to look at it would be if we came back a year from now and you said, well, now it's 49%. I thought, you know, you were gonna manage the budget
Right.
based on the number of people, right? If it holds at 47% and our budget's lower, then that means we have said through attrition,
Mhm.
right? We have let go of some people, or
Right.
at least positions, as Scott mentioned, position-based budgeting. You know, we had 28 positions, now we have 26.
No,
So that number should
Right.
drop
It
down.
would drop down, but if we all know that line is there, we have a ceiling.
Technically, you could do it that way.
Mhm.
The hope would be, you would say.
It would certainly
we
add a
trust
challenge
you,
to it.
Mr.
No, I
Grill, to
understand.
make- Yeah.
Yes, it certainly adds a challenge to the table because
Certainly adds a
everybody has to play within those parameters all of a sudden.
That's-
Just a thought, I'm just thinking out loud here.
And that's
Brett,
the
I had a
problem.
thought on, I think one of the things that you're talking about too is the older teachers, right, that have been around for a lot longer are more expensive than the younger ones, right?
Correct.
But with the new laws that went into place with these younger teachers, there's a new expense that's come into play with, you know, they're probably having babies where the 60-year-old person probably is not. So there's a different expense there now that they're not used to be.
Right, yeah,
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 that's a
yeah.
really good point. Demographics matter.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I'm familiar with the PERS tiers as well, and as we get younger folks coming in, is that something that can be decided by our council that we no longer offer them PERS? And I know that's a horrible thing to say, but it's happening at the state level as well, where people coming in tier 3, or they only get, you know, a
off service,
401k,
yeah.
right? Other different types of benefits where that finally will.
I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's illegal. I do know that if we didn't offer it, we would be at a huge disadvantage for hiring.
And I get that. I
Yeah,
understand.
that would be the most difficult part, if somebody would say, hey, we get 6% or 4.5% with regard to PERS, do you match that? We do. Right, so we can compete with districts around us.
Right.
Even Jefferson last year, right, Dawn was here, she went to Jefferson, the first thing she did was say, we want to have PERS so we can match, because they kept losing teachers.
So
somewhere
let's say
else.
5, 10 years from now, you know, we're not gonna get, let's say, as much state money and Fed money, you know, we have to depend on ourselves. Is there something we can do as a board that says we need to really start hammering on our corporate influencers and donations and grant writers and people that we can extract money other ways, stop thinking about it coming and hoping from bonds and taxes, but by golly, all of our athletes are now supported by, you know, somebody locally that wants to do that. And I know it's hard to get people to volunteer and do it, but maybe we need to boost that part of it because they're here and have kids and maybe would then
Interesting outside the box thinking.
trying, because I don't, the writing's on the wall that the zeros are coming.
Right.
And attrition's great, but then sometimes budget lines are specific, like, okay, we lost maybe an assistant in sped, but that doesn't pay for a certified person over here, so then, you know, Mr. Pillar gets to play with the deck chairs on the Titanic and rearrange them, but it's still not bumping back up. And
One of the other things we have said, we did 10 years ago, right? Was, and the principals that are in the room, they've already heard me, right? Which is, hey, if you have an opening and we have a veteran or somebody that's retiring, right? We can talk about how young do you hire, right? As opposed to an experienced person, you hire younger. Because if you hire younger, they're cheaper, right? So you have a brand new teacher that comes in that just got out of school and a retiree that just left. That's a $35,000 difference.
but like Aaron just said, not so much now if we're,
If you hire really young, they're not even married yet.
but they think,
No. 5 years later, you really pay for it, which is what happened. US this year, right? But
Surprising.
yes, I think all of those variables are at play. What you suggest about PERS is unique, because I haven't heard anybody say that yet.
well, because that's a dirty thing to say to people, they want their benefits, and I agree with them,
Sure.
but I have a husband that works for the state, and I understand that feeling of, you know, he's partially tier 1, and then 10 years later, it got cut, it's frozen, so it's a reality, it's something that maybe we need to offer a different benefit, maybe, you know, I don't know what that carrot
Did you
looks
say
like.
Jefferson doesn't have?
They didn't have the match, so they have PERS, right?
6% match.
But we also pay the employees match to it.
Oh.
Almost all the districts do, right? As a way to incentivize them to come to you.
Mhm.
Jefferson didn't. So the first thing Don did was, we're adding that as part of negotiations, right? And the district debated it, and I said, no, we need to get better teachers. We don't have the same quality of teachers as Cascade, as Staten, as SIO, as some of the others. So that was one of her first moves,
Okay.
to try to improve the quality of educators that they get. Because educators have choices. In the upcoming, if we end up in some sort of a small recession or an actual recession, right, that flips, where best teachers have choices, there's not a lot of openings. But in
Well,
the
and
last 4 or
actually-
5 years, there's a lot of openings, they got to pick and choose.
And they can pick in negotiating with your groups is you either get a pay freeze to be able to keep your 6% contribution to your PERS, or we're gonna reduce your PERS contribution to make 3% if you actually want more in your paycheck.
There are conversations that are taking
conversations like
place,
that.
usually in negotiations is, I want all of it. That's usually where they start.
Sure.
So,
else.
That's not
And,
fun.
you know, that's their job. That's their job to ask for as much as they. That's their job.
It's interesting, the first pickup, 6% was done, correct me if somebody else knows the exact dates on this, but it was in the early eighties when we were in pretty significant recession. A lot of public employees were not getting raises. There was no
Right.
money for raises. And so the offer to pick up the 6% contribution was made simply because it saves both the employer some money, right? So by when we pay somebody 6% raise, for instance, we have a burdened and benefit cost to that. Providing 6% of salary to a retirement program relieves us of that cost. So as the 6% goes, it's a pretty good deal for us as the employer relative to 6% of salary. So anyway, Wendy and then Don. Or, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I didn't know.
There's a fund. What is the safe school culture?
The Safe School Culture Grant is a new grant. You wanna talk about it just real quick?
Yeah, I can talk about it if you want to. So
I don't know that grant.
Safe School, so basically we train, or train trainers. And so each one, like at Momsville, we have special programs there for kids that are in self-contained classrooms. So like how to handle like a restraint or a seclusion. And so we train our staff members on how to do that safely. And so we train Vicky Peters, Senior Coleman, and we make sure that they are trained. And so now they can train our staff. And so all our admin and all of our instructional assistants are now trained on how to do that. And so we pay for any sub costs or any training to train them to kind of go with that. So we'll make sure that we're covered and we're in compliance with state law and regulation around handling those situations.
So only those people at Almsville or
No,
throughout the
like
district?
Julian,
Anybody.
Okay.
yeah, so building admin, so anybody that we really hit on anybody that would have that opportunity that would arise. And so if we have a runner and a kid's running, we have to put a kid in a restraint to make sure that he is safe, or they are not he, but they are safe, that we can do it safely in the right way. And also to make sure that we're following protocols afterwards and reviewing that, just make sure that we're that trained up to date across the district.
To your point, though, most staff are at Elmsville because we have all of the stuff clean.
All of our special education staff.
Yeah, it's all special education staff and admin, basically when it comes down to.
Donnie?
I would assume that you guys do long-range planning and projecting, correct?
Correct.
And I would assume that in that planning and projecting, you've identified extracurricular activities and whatnot that can be cut before we start cutting teachers' PERS retirements.
So one of the first things that we talked about for the upcoming year is attrition, right? We know about how many people on average leave. We also recognize that in a tighter economy, fewer people do that, right? But there's also something a little bit unique, whereas in the legislature 2 years ago agreed to allow people to retire and work back, right? So at the moment, we have a number of employees who have retired and are working back, right? And we want those employees because of their experience. However, they are probably not as, the contracts that we set up for them are a year-to-year contract, right? And our associations agreed, they actually agreed to that. They're like, our job is to take care of the active members that are here for a much longer period of time. And so one of the things we look at is, for next year, do we say to those folks that have retired that are working back, next year will be your last year, right? Whether it's admin, whether it's teachers, whether it's classified. So that's another long range question to ask. I am fairly confident, not completely confident, that we will see enough attrition to help with this offset with this. I'm also a little bit hopeful. Call me Wednesday afternoon and when the financial forecast comes out. I'm a little bit hopeful that the legislature will provide a little more money, only because for the first time in about 35 years, I witnessed a number of educational folks and a number of advocates, particularly in special education, actually band together. These are people that usually fight across the table with one another, but they went to the legislature collectively and said, you have not adjusted special education since the early 90s. It is time for you to put money on the table. And so the next move, I believe, if the legislature has the funds, will be to give public schools more money in the realm of special education. which will help us across the board. So I am still slightly optimistic, but those are some of the long-term pieces that I'm taking a look at, for sure.
Okay, and I have one more question. So I'm just a dummy, so explain it to me
No,
like
no dumb
that.
questions, brother.
So it sounds like the enrollment rate is a bit of a volatile number that's ever changing, it's
All
fluid.
the time.
But yet buildings and grades have caps on the number of students. But it sounds like with that enrollment number, every penny of that is budgeted. Correct? Obviously.
So when we say, hey, we think we're gonna have 2,730 kids next year, that's what we budget for. If we're below that, we're a little light. If we're above that, then we've got a little more left over. Does that make sense?
It does, but
Okay.
I guess that brings me to my point is what I'm struggling with is that seems almost, that seems dangerous to me. It seems dangerous to budget with a number that is so fluid that
Sure.
if an apartment complex in Almsville burns down and 20 kids have to relocate or somebody makes somebody mad and because earlier, you said 10 kids was $110,000. So yeah, it just seems like that's a very dangerous game to
I
play.
totally agree with you. So if I think everybody in the room would be like, hey, you know what, the smart prudent thing to do is lowball that,
Yeah,
right? You're like lowball.
yeah,
that.
because yeah,
So every 2 years I negotiate, right? And so not picking on either of those associations, but they're gonna walk through the door and look at what Brett just said about, hey, 6% in cash carryover, right? You got more than enough money to pay us more money, right? He as the board chair might say, hey, 6% is for 6%. They're gonna look at him and say, that's just a number you guys picked out of the air. This district does this district does this. If I said, hey, we're only gonna get 2,700 kids next year, and I end up with 2,750, right? They're gonna look at me and say, you budgeted wrong. You got 2,750. So we try to guess as exact as we can with regard to transparency. We want to make sure that we are as transparent as we can, because we don't want to turn and go, well, we thought we were gonna have 3.5 million. We really have 4.5 million. Right? About the only time that's ever happened is when we saw the really for us, the combination of ESSER funds and the growth had happened at the same time. That's the only time in our careers where we were like, wow, where did we see that? And it only took our associations, and rightly so, right? About 6 months to go, you got the cash. Let's go. Let's go. Right? It's time to pay us.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the hard part about it. I totally get what you're saying. Right. And as it is, we really feel like we are as conservative as we can be with regard to the numbers. So Greg, were you gonna say something?
Just talk about the safety net that the whole harmless brings as well, because that's part of this one.
Yeah, I can address that. So if we're in a situation and it's a year by year situation, so let's say we have 3,000 students in this current fiscal year, and that's what we're getting paid on. Next year, we start the year at 3,000 students, but like you say, something happens and we lose 100 automatically. There is a 1-year safety net called safe harbor where it just goes back to the most recent number. So it would just drop down to 3,000.
They'll pay you for that. And one of the things that happened, particularly like in Phoenix, right? They lost, 3 or 4 neighborhoods because of the fires, and same up the canyon, right? They paid those folks for what the last year's number was, because they had so many people leave. It got so bad, they actually went to the legislature and said, can you hold that number? Just recently, they said, okay, we've done that for 3 or 4 years, time's up. And the superintendent at Phoenix Talent was like, I'm still not back. I'm gonna lose big dollars this year. I'm not back to the same number. But that's a great question.
Makes sense. Thank
And
you.
it just makes it difficult for us to kind of do this thing. Others.
I had a quick one to Mr. Pillar. There's a
Sure.
Fund 271 technology enhancement. I was just curious why it's all going to elementary. They're probably the reason I just don't know what it is, why junior high and high school's not getting any of it.
That was that actually we have the ability to move it between the different schools without a resolution approval. And so that just happened to be the active account that held last year's amount.
So it's just a bucket.
So yeah, it's just a bucket. It's just a holding account. That is a good catch. You will notice that dropped down from last year's allocation from 125,000 down to 75,000, I believe, this year. So
Mine's showing 55,000 for current year and it's up to 100 next year. It's in page 73 in section 3.
Oh, but the proposed budget, oh yeah, oh yeah, we did put it back up to 100,000.
I didn't know if they were expecting to hopefully get like more computers for the kiddos, or if there was maybe something coming to the elementary school, because I know they're hard on them, so they can leave them. But I don't
Yes,
know.
they do.
They're hard on everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the bond, I haven't participated much in that.
Sure.
Is that gonna be hopefully for, like, I'm gonna put a plug in like AC for the junior high, our track is horrible, we need an extra gym, those kinds of things. Is that what
So
it's
the
like
committee,
again?
yeah, the committee at the moment, Greg talked about it earlier today with our admin team. They are honing in, so we had a whole committee, it was kind of invitees, we had everybody from every corner of the district. We put them in the room, we said, here are the things, we walked through the different buildings, here are the issues. This is how much money you can raise, so right now, we're all paying about $1.10, 11, 12 cents per thousand. 20 years ago, that started at $1.97, that's where we were, 20 years ago. And so the conversation is, do you go back, in 2 years, that $1.10, 11 goes to zero. So our hope is to catch it, so we stay at least at $1.10, 11. But because we don't have a lot of business in our district, tax-wise, it's not a lot of money. So do we raise it back to $1.97? Do we try $2.29? Do we take a look at what we look at, like Staten and Jefferson and Salem? And so those are the questions. And then at that point, we're gonna put it out to our community. We're gonna try to get that information back. We're gonna go to the board in June and say, will you go out for a bond in November to do that? But those things that you listed are on that.
They're
That
on the
can
list.
help us
Yeah.
I think they were
financially
listening.
not have to pay for those things.
And then the
Everybody.
thing with buying side accounts, is there a way that you guys can pass a policy that says if the bond price is X amount, go buy some? Because waiting every 20 years, when you kind of want that to be a rolling side account, can you do that like every 5 or 10? Or whenever the market says this is the time to do it?
You can, it takes about 6 months to put together a side account. One of the ways that we can do it without going out for voter approval is by joining in consortium with other school districts. So we have to kind of bond together. The side account that we're part of that is almost ready to expire, I believe we were in joining with about 75 to 80 other school districts in order to do that. And it's a tremendous amount of work putting that together. That team of people that are interested in that side account has been together and working at it. We're at the point now where we're watching the bond market to determine when a good time would be to go out. When that bond market, we're thinking positively, it's going to stabilize and will hopefully lower. When that does happen, we will be relatively ready to go, but it will still take 4 or 5 months for us to get from the point of pulling the trigger at the board level to actually getting the proceeds in the account. And again, even at that point, there is a certain level of risk, right? Because, if the economy kind of tanks or we go through a period of significant downward economic performance in the very first part of that, timing is everything in those types of side accounts. If we go into a negative performance feature in that first year, it could impact us negatively for 20 years into the future. So we just don't know. It is a little bit of a crap.
It's cautionary at some degree because the first two groups in like 2004 or 5, and then 6, 7, when we went out, 5, 6, they were okay. Another group, a smaller group of school districts went out in 7, 8, at the beginning of 7. And then the market crashed. They had been chasing that bond the whole 20 years. They can't get it off their books fast enough. They made no money. They dropped so fast, so hard that they never recovered from it. So that became a cautionary tale to kind of like, let's do it hold on. Let's think about that. Because nobody wants to be the one that said, oh yeah, we bought bonds and they tanked. I remember that board member or that super.
That makes sense.
They're always like, no, not interested in that concept. So they're kind of weighing the odds.
That's a very good question. All very good questions. Any more of the community?
I guess on that same note, in the future, are you still considering going with that same group that we are currently with?
Yes, Piper Sandler is probably there's one other company that sells muni bonds, but they are probably the ones that are considered the experts in terms of these types of purse bonds. Yeah.
Same group, and they're saying wait and watch.
Yeah.
You're up.
Okay, so You can now please open the public hearing.
So we're gonna open public hearing and it says the wording will be on the screen.
There it is.
There it is. The Budget Committee Chair, blah, 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 blah. The public hearing of 25-26 proposed budget is now open. Any member of the public can address the Budget Committee on the proposed budget. Members of the public may be asked to limit their remarks in the interest of time and allow others to comment. With that being said, we are opening public hearing. Does anyone from the public or any of the board members have any further discussion items? Come on, you gang in the back. You just here hanging out?
Nothing
Wow.
better to do.
That's so exciting.
All right, then with that being said, the public hearing is closed. You missed your chance. All right.
All right, so at this point, we now deliberate, so you can deliberate and discuss the proposed budget. Again, any changes to the proposed budget must be moved to the second and passed by a majority of the budget committee as a whole. Historically, we have not had a lot of deliberation, but these were interesting times, so. All right, if anybody has anything that's burning, certainly work with the group to come to agreement or consensus on it.
Based on everything Mr. Pillar has gone over for us today, does anyone have any questions or concerns for that matter? Any concerns whatsoever? This fabulous budget.
There's always concerns, right?
Now's the time to air those concerns. What are they?
Oh, nothing specific. I wanted to piggyback on what you said earlier, though. I think my biggest concern is burning through all of that that savings so fast, and I just cautious us to just burn through it so fast. So I don't have the solution or, do this instead. I have concerns with.
Totally agree. The other side of it is we need to cut more. We need to start with people. So it gives us from now until the end of June to let people know that they don't have a job. And so our thoughts were, let's save that fun task for next year if nothing gets better.
Right.
And give us an opportunity, us collectively, administrators and staff, to say, hey, we're in save mode. How can we do a great job working with kids and figure out a way to save? We have veterans that did it before. I think John probably said it to me best, which is now is a great opportunity to hone in on exactly what your charge or what your job is and focus on that. And I appreciated that comment. John was talking to me on the phone a couple weeks ago. So I'm with you. I don't like it either because I've been there and it's not fun. But I'd rather try it this way and see if it works. If I'm back in a year and I'm shaking my head no, then you guys could be like, told you. Should have done something a little more severe. But we're gonna have to monitor as we go. And I think our board needs to remind us, where are you? How's it going?
So that was part of my next question is, let's say we get 6 months down the road and we decide, hey, this is not working. Do we have the ability in 6 months to make drastic changes to our budget at that point?
There's some things you can do. And there's things that the board can do, but you can also direct to us to say, you need to try to shrink your staff quicker. And that would be the first suggestion that I would suggest to you to direct me to do.
So really what I'm hearing then is the proposed budget right now is really we're gonna hold our breath, but kind of prepare people for, we potentially got some heartburn coming a year from now. And everybody to try to do their best to control costs, and if they don't, we're gonna have to make some unfun decisions.
I'm hopeful that we can collectively get together instead of heartburn, maybe just some air bubbles.
Right.
And we can go from there. So we'll go from there.
If it got to that point though, is staff the first thing to get cut or is it the number of school days?
Either way, it's been interesting to have that conversation with our associations. Their leadership has changed. And after we got done with the Great Recession, I was told by both associations, we will never cut a day again.
Oh, really?
They looked at us and said, no way, we'll never do that again. My response to them, which probably wasn't very nice, was, so you'd rather eat your young than cut a day. That leadership at that time, the leadership has changed, right? Was absolutely.
So that means they don't want to take any day cuts so that so everybody essentially takes a pay cut. They'd rather have the newbies.
Good job. Now, both associations could look at it differently. And, our association, I think that they would at least seriously listen to that conversation first before they went there.
And I want to say, I don't believe that. It came down to it. I do not believe it.
You were hopeful, I was hopeful that it was just coming from the leadership's comment,
Right.
not the collective.
Exactly.
Me too, but that's what I got told, and they were representing as the leadership for those groups.
Remind me, how often does Scott present at the board meetings?
Every month.
Every month.
It's every month? Okay.
Yep, you'll
So we
get
would
the same
have-
kind of financial updates every
It
month.
would be every month that we'd at least.
Yeah, so you'll
update
be
on where
able to
we're
look
at.
in that cash flow report that you see, that
Yeah.
financial report does a pretty good job of predicting what that ending fund balance.
I haven't had to
is
pay
gonna
as much attention to it in the past, so.
be. Well,
The last 6 or 7 years we haven't, but now's the time to pay attention.
yeah, because the numbers have all been good, so I'll, tonight, when I present tonight, I'll just show you some of the numbers you want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I was just thinking like moving forward, we'll get
Yeah,
it each
watch-
month, we'll
watch
have
this,
a better idea where we're standing, you know, if we have to make
Yeah.
changes or not.
Yeah.
You know,
That's what happens.
And we might end up with more money too.
We might.
Yeah,
Right.
we could.
I said earlier, we asked the administrators tonight, can you figure out a way to save, well, I took money from them, I didn't figure out. Yeah, you were given a choice. Now, I didn't take all their money between now and June, I left some,
for now.
for now. But I said, if you're not gonna use it, sweet, because every dollar that will save between now and June 30th, we can push into cash carryover and bring that number up.
Right.
Right? It's a whole different conversation come July 1 when we say, here are schools, here curriculum, here the different funds, right? We think you should be able to do with less and save even more money that way. There's ways for us to do that. But that's a collective conversation I need to have with, people I rely on to run their buildings. I trust them to say, this is truly what I need.
Right.
So, and if they don't whine a little bit and complain
I
a little
agree.
bit, then they're not doing their job. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Okay, so, in item 12 on the agenda is the approval of the proposed budget. So any member of the budget committee can make a motion to effect what is read there on the board. So if, somebody would like to make.
Someone like to move the bottom portion there?
Anybody can agree.
Go ahead, just blurt it out.
Oh, sure, I'll do it.
All right.
All right. I move that the Cascade School District Budget Committee approve the 25-26 proposed budget in the aggregate amount of $64,331,983 and set the property tax rate at the permanent amount of 4.6405 per thousand of assessed value.
Somebody needs a second.
Second.
All right. 9A, approval of the 25-26 proposed budget and set the property tax rate has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, with that being said, you can now eat your sandwich. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you very much for your service.
Yes.
Appreciate it, gang.
They're gonna come in here and rearrange the table. We're actually, the first part of our board meeting tonight is to congratulate our valedictorians and salutatorian. So